Perfect. So let me introduce our next speaker. We get up here for laptop. So we have, for us next, Dr. Walterio Mayol with us. So little bio on him. So Professor Mayol is a member of the Software Department at the University of the UK, as well as a principal research scientist here at Amazon in Seattle. His PhD work from the University of Oxford developed some of the earliest wearable computing systems with cameras, and with his collaborators at Oxford and Bristol, one of the earliest example of 6D VSLAM, visual SLAM, real-time applications to robotics and augmented reality. So with that, please welcome Dr. Mayol with us.
Thank you. And perhaps a little clarification. Everything I will be talking about is with my university hat. Okay? But we have seen fascinating stories and potentials about the future of XR. Sometimes it's good to step back and have a look at what was the future looking like a few years ago. And let me use this example, which is a karma system developed by my colleague Steve Feiner and his team at Columbia University 30 years ago. So in this case, what we have is a system that, in my view, is one of the milestones. There were several other few systems that attempted to demonstrate similar things, but in this case, what you have here is a system that allows you to visualize how to interact, in this case, try to repair a machine, in this case, a basic printer. And it did so by having markers that you see here in these triangles here that have ultrasonic transmitters, and there were some receivers here and also on the display. And so you knew where everything was, thanks to the markers, you were able to display, hopefully you can see even with the lighting, you can display this type of basic annotations, augmentations on how to interact with that device. And as part of my PhD work, I actually work in trying to reduce the need for having to have these markers that you have here. And so essentially what you see here is perhaps the very first visual SLAM system working in 6 degrees of freedom in real time within an augmented reality system, and the context was remote collaboration. So there was a wearable camera that was transmitting scenes to a remote location and building a map in real time for something which was beyond the small object. Because some systems have demonstrated building AR for small objects. This is like a small office-sized space. All these features that you see there are features that are put together by the system. And after you know where everything is, then you're able to add annotations. This is 2003, so the type of annotations were extremely basic. You have these yellow cubes in there that are left by the remote expert trying to annotate different things in the scene. And so this work, Andrew Davidson and I from Oxford, we put it together. And afterwards, we also tried to start to integrate this with the human in the loop. So this is real time, this is 2004, early days, where you have annotations enabled by hand that interacts with that 3D map that has been built. And after you do a few gestures in there, you're able to add virtual objects into the scene. So, a reasonable question is then, this is 30 years ago, 20 years ago, where is our everywhere XR assistant? I'm not necessarily talking about the beautiful examples and the very interesting work that we are seeing in this workshop about specific locations in manufacturing or medicine. I'm really talking about that vision that we were promised many years ago, that by now we will have this assistance that will enable us to do anything you want. You want to drive a steam train, you will now have to do that. You want to close these blinds in there, Who knows how to close these blinds, by the way? Imagine that you just knew how to do anything you want. I'm sure we can close them, but we will spend a few minutes fighting that panel over there, potentially, assuming that that panel is the one that helps us to do that. Or think about repairing your washing machine, think about building that bicycle for your kid, and not fearing that you're going to get stuck. So where is our XR that is able to help you every time, ever? Still missing. So the traditional XR approach, and specifically AR and VR, starts with assuming that you have to have this reference with the world. You have to build this map like the work I did for my PhD. And after you do that, you're able to add annotations that you somehow magically created into that environment that you now have a reference against. And when you don't get the performance that you expect, what happens? Let's blame the hardware or the software. The device is too heavy, the computation is not sufficient. The software is unable to cope with a large enough environment. There is no question that we want to have those beautiful and working devices from the point of view of hardware and from the point of view of tracking out. But I think we have been ignoring something that is essentially now becoming the pain point for us to really deliver what XR assistive systems are meant to be doing. So what are the bottlenecks in order to enable us to realize these things? What are we actually missing? Let me go back to this illustration of the karma system, which again is to me a significant milestone in assistive XR. Well, most of the people, myself included, concentrated on developing the hardware aspects to enable this vision. We have been ignoring this other side. The what content and from where is it coming from. What are we going to show? How are we going to create that content? Admittedly, from the early days, even the karma system highlighted the importance of having to develop systems that automated the creation of content. However, we have invested a significant amount of time into developing the hardware and the algorithms that we appear to think we need in order to provide that dream of having information at your disposal that enables you to do anything you want. So, in my view, one of the significant pain points, one of the significant milestones that still needs to be achieved is how do we author in an automated way that content that we're going to. How are we going to learn from potentially hundreds or millions of examples, perhaps people, that are providing the information that we might need in order to build that content that we need? How and when we're going to decide to deliver that content? We have heard beautiful stories from previous speakers about we don't want to have information that is irrelevant when you don't need it. So how are we going to decide that is still a big problem. And perhaps the hardest obstacle of all, in my view, has been so far to remember that we actually have a human in the room. A human that is perfectly capable of doing many things without some of the pre-assumptions that we have ingrained into the future or potential future of XR systems. Let me ask you a question as an example. How would you create an XR app for someone to be able to make fire? What would you do? Will we start modeling logs in 3D? Arranging rocks in 3D? Are we going to create animations of 3D hands? Trying to make fire? What would you actually do if you actually need this? This is actually an arguably fundamental skill for survival. And I'm sure here in Seattle, a lot of people know how to do this, but the rest of the world probably will still struggle if you're faced with a situation like that. Yeah? So what would you actually do if you had to achieve a task that is not very well structured? It can be cooking, it can be anything that is not a very well constrained industrial application. I'm really talking about these day-to-day living applications that we want. If your intuition is to go to YouTube to know how to do this, how to address this, it will not be that wrong. And the reason why it will not be that wrong is because there is this significant competence that we have as humans, which is the ability of imitate how to do things. There is underpinning from the experimental psychology literature that points to motor mirror neurons that allow you to imitate. There is still questions about if that mechanism exists, but there is no denial that if I show you a video about how to make fire, you will have at least an idea of how to get started. Yeah? Now, what if I tell you that the power of imitation goes beyond humans and is ingrained in a far more rooted physiological mechanism? So what you see here is this work by Anna Wilkinson from the University of Lincoln in the UK, where you have a lizard, it's actually a bearded dragon, looking at video of another lizard, solving a problem, and after that, that lizard is able to solve the problem. Would you like to see a video of that?
Yes. Gus settles in to watch the movie where the hero dragon opens the gate. But will it help him solve the problem and get to the snack? An initial bout of headbanging suggests he's forgotten what he's seen in the video. But suddenly, Oscar makes a breakthrough, and he's gulping down his grubby reward. He's copied the dragon in the video almost perfectly, using his front foot to slide the gate to the left. For the 8 bearded dragons tested in this way, the results were the same. The dragons that didn't see the solution in the video couldn't do it, but the dragons that did were munching mealworms within seconds. Gus settles in to watch the movie.
You get there. Okay. Now, think about all those things that you face day to day, where you're struggling and you wish you knew what to do. We take them as facts of life. I am not a washing machine technician, so how will I possibly know what to do in a situation like that? This is actually meant to be an espresso machine. How do I operate that? I have faced this very recently. I struggled for about 5 hours trying to assemble my kid's bike, and it happens that I just had to find one particular piece that was stuck in a specific location from the factory. They always supply it in exactly the same way. I spent hours trying to figure out what to do. Think of all these experiences that we have day to day, that are totally lost because they are never captured. Those experiences of someone that actually closed the blinds in this room, those experiences of someone making fire, making a particular dish, all those experiences are usually lost. And if they are not lost, they are probably available on YouTube, but totally disorganized, in a way that they are as good as if they were not there. Because in order to access our repository of videos and information like that, you actually will have to know what you're looking for in the first place. The information is not located, is not collocated with the situation and moment that you need it to. and it's not specific to what you're actually after. So in my team at the University of Bristol, we have been developing systems in the MR spectrum that observe people and try to capture the experiences that those people have, and in a way that we can automate the creation of the content and delivery of the content in a collocated way. This is one of our earliest works. This is called U2 I Learned from a computer vision conference called BNBC. And what the system does is several people interact with objects, and the system automatically recognizes and starts to learn what parts of those objects people interact with. Yes, you can interact with an object in so many ways, but there are some very principal ways and consistent ways in which people interact with something. So they are more likely for you to use. So the system learns those different parts and objects that people interact with as they go about, and also learns the ways in which you interact with those things. So if people is let loose in an environment and we turn on the system starts to learn that people interact with something like the faucet or the cutlery pot, parts of the photocopier, specific parts of a gym machine. So different parts that people start to interact with. And also the ways in which people are interacting with these machines. In the UK, in order for you to actually plug something and get electricity out, you actually have to turn on a switch. I don't know if you're familiar with that system, but you have to plug something into a socket and then turn the switch, or the other way around, but you actually have to turn the switch. So the way in which people interact with that socket has two modalities: plugging something and turning on the switch, or ensuring that the switch is on. And the system automatically, using computer vision methods that characterize motion, learn how people have interacted with these objects and used them. And our more recent system, which is called Glacier, is a much more simplified system where what we do is essentially remove some of the complexities of the earlier system. The earlier system had visual mapping and many other fancy things. On this system, which is fully automated, there is no editing at all, it's unsupervised, it can learn from multiple users, and runs everything on board Google Glass device. With its very limited type of screen, its very limited computing power. But there are three components to this system that we've been developing. And the first one is indeed, how do I know that someone is doing something that is worth capturing? So we call this a detection of users' attention or interaction. And then, after we detect that someone is paying attention to something, we try to capture a small video guide, which is automatically edited, about how someone has interacted with that device. And then we put all this information into a database, and next time someone looks at that object, using computer vision, we retrieve the information of what experiences have happened around that object, and that person is able to conduct the task, or at least it knows, the person knows how to use that device. So, because Google Glass has obviously limitations, one of them, we heard about the importance of recovering gaze. Google Glass has no gaze detector, so we actually learn from the accelerometer how a gaze tracker works based on the head motions. And it turns out that there is a lot of information that you can extract from how your head is moving and when you're actually interacting with something. Your head essentially remains relatively still. The angular velocity of your head, you can compute with that, and you can learn within that constraint of interacting with something to behave as if you were a case tracker. So we use that, and we can actually predict with a good amount of time, more than 1 second in advance, if you're going to interact or you're already interacting with something. So this is a very strong cue of how you are interacting with something. Remember that what we are after is being able to automatically author content. So this is already a good step towards being able to capture relevant information from the world without having to create fancy 3D animations that may be actually very hard to understand. So after we run the system, we can discover what people actually do with different objects in the environment. And then, as we said before, we link this with computer vision methods, which in this case run everything on board glass. And what we're doing here is just learning the way in which these objects that people interacted with look like. So that next time, when we actually see this object again, we can retrieve the information that we have captured before. Extremely straightforward, extremely simple. The type of extra hardware that we need to develop this is significantly less complicated than what we might envision we might actually need to replicate something like this. So this is a video of the system in operation. So there is a teaching phase where we have someone interacting with the environment, but recall that this is totally unsupervised, so there is no stop learning and start using. It's all continuous. The system detects that you are using things, captures these small video guides around what people is using, and this is an example of the type of video guide that is being recorded. The image quality, I'm sure on the screen, is not as good as it might appear, but we do this for multiple people. So we actually have multiple people that are interacting with the world, interacting with these objects. We gather all this information in an automated way. The system automatically decides how to edit these video guides, and then we run these for multiple tasks. And eventually, we have someone that has never used this machine. In this case, the user self-certified that he has never used an oscilloscope in his life, but he has used other things that require the same steps that you will need in order to set up an oscilloscope. But after watching a couple of guides that were automatically triggered by the computer vision on board glass, is able to conduct the task of setting up that machine. This will be an ideal task for traditional AR systems, where you have arrows in 3D pointing to exactly which button. There are actually 32 buttons in there, and we didn't need to have a 3D arrow in order to tell this capable human which button is the one you actually need to interact with. So another strong point on being careful about the type of information that we might want to provide. We need to think carefully about what we actually need to have. And essentially, in our experimental results, we can show that the guides that the system automatically generates are as good as if we have an expert generating these video guides. So at least there is some reassurance there that the system is not harming the potential if you were manually editing things. But I guess the next important question is, you gather all this data, you gather all these videos, you gather all this information. How are you going to decide what to show? In the case of the Glaser system, we do a super simple thing, which is we show you the video guide which is closer to the viewpoint from where you're observing the object. So someone has observed this object before, interacted with this object before, and the system essentially just shows you the closest video guide to that viewpoint. So extremely simple, but this is not scalable. The reality is that, again, along the need for understanding content authoring, we actually need to understand how to rank these experiences from the point of view of, let's say, skill. So this is some deep learning algorithms that we have started to develop in the last couple of years that we have published in CVPR. So one of the papers, who is better, who is best. And the idea is you have information that is from daily living tasks, and we want the system to rank who is better and who is worse, so that we can actually use that in order to trigger the video guidance that we are trying to do. And let me just play as a last demonstration this video on the system.
When assessing skill in long video, there may be variability in the skill exhibited throughout a video. In this example, the left video shows better skill in egg cracking. However, as the videos proceed, higher overall skill is shown in the right-hand video. Trained attention can also exclude parts irrelevant for skill assessment. Let's present qualitative results. We show video segments with strong attention responses for the low skill module from various tasks. In surgery, strain of a material is a sign of low skill present in only low-ranked videos. In applied eyeliner, segments show mistakes being fixed. In origami, the module tends to undoing previous folds. For high skill module attention responses, consistent performance can be seen in the segments with straightening edges in dough rolling and origami. Interestingly, for drawing, pausing to consider is indicative of high skill. Next, we show videos ranked by our method and demonstrate the varying attention over time. Response of the high skill module in green show increased attention when a bean is being picked up. The low skill module, shown in red, attends to difficulties in gripping beans. In Tai, we see that, for the most part, our method correctly ranks pairs of videos. It only struggles with pairs close in the ranking, such as the first and second videos displayed here. These are swapped in the ground truth. For longer tasks, such as scrambling eggs, filter responses are more sparse. Green demonstrates segments attended to by the high skill module, while red indicates the low skill module's attention weighting.
I actually learned how to do a tie by watching YouTube. And indeed, this ability of being able to rank who is better and who is less good is fundamental. It actually goes down again and underpins how humans learn. If you see someone making fire in a better way than you are doing, you're very likely to try to copy that person, and you can assess who is better. And you being able to decide who to copy from is actually very central. And if we can develop automated ways in which we can structure the content that is generated in a way that we can decide what to show for mixed reality and XR systems, I believe that we will be making some good progress in order to catch up with the beautiful things that hardware and software has been able to do for us in other fronts. So, as per the original question, are we looking at what matters? Yes, we are looking at what matters, because we still need all these things that are being developed from the point of view of the hardware and the software. But ignoring how we're going to populate and what we're going to present when we actually have that beautiful hardware that is comfortable and that allows you to access information, deciding what we're going to show and how we're going to show it is going to be one of the key things that we need to resolve in order to really materialize that dream of the ultimate XR hardware. Thank you.